Good evening. I'd like to bring this committee of the whole meeting held Tuesday, June 15th, 2021 to order. And I just want to thank you all for coming out on this fairly nice evening. You could be doing other things, we're aware of that. But thank you for being here and working with us towards our OCP. The adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Not actually on this agenda, Your Worship.
Pardon?
Not actually on this agenda, Your Worship.
Okay, that's why I can't find it. I was going to say there's got to be a date attached to it. Okay, so next time. So new business, official community plan visioning, and Mr. MacArthur, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So today we're going to talk all about the OCP vision statement, and hopefully by the end of the workshop here we'll have a draft vision that we can take forward and incorporate into the draft OCP document so that residents can provide feedback when we have that document released to the public in the coming months. I would also like to give a little shout out to Canada. Go Canada Go, because we're having a very important soccer game right now. Biggest soccer game in Canadian men's history in the last 23 years. So if anyone wants updates on that, it will be on my computer as we go through this.
I appreciate the honesty. Stay focused.
Yeah. So, but first I would like to give a bit of an overview of where we're at in the OCP process. So if Mr. Lois can bring us to the third slide. Oh, no, one back. There we are. So we of course started the OCP process last year, and the consultant and staff worked on background research through the summer, and that led us to a series of engagement events throughout the fall. As we progressed into the winter months, we had several committee of the whole meetings, as you'll recall, including one on vision in January. As we move into the spring, we've been consolidating all of that input from the public in last fall and from council throughout the winter to create the beginnings of a draft plan. And tonight, of course, we're looking at the vision statement. Moving forward, we're hoping that we'll be able to release the draft plan in the coming months and have another round of engagement with the community. Next slide there, Craig. So when we looked at these types of inputs, we had, of course, the engagement I mentioned, committee of the whole. The consultant also has then provided their take on the vision statements, and then staff as well, the OCP steering committee, have provided feedback. So based on all of those, we've come up with these draft statements tonight, and we're hoping to have a good discussion and potentially revise some of these statements and then hopefully select the preferred option. So back in the fall, these were the 5 main themes that were identified by the community, sort of overarching themes throughout all of our engagement feedback that we had. Housing, the city center, and revitalizing that area of the community. Economic diversification. Parks and trails came up a lot, as well as climate change and resiliency, especially around things like flood and wildfire, that sort of thing. So we wanted to make sure that we were capturing these types of topics when we were developing not only the vision statement, but also the policies in the draft plan. And these are the topics that were discussed at the January 19th Committee of the Whole. We talked about identity of the community, reconciliation, neighborhoods, land use and development, economic prosperity, sound government practices, an active and thriving community. So that speaks to active transportation, parks, recreation, all of that. Also infrastructure, and then again, climate change. So These were the sort of the big items, and of course council will recall that we did the word mapping exercise. So out of that we had a number of words and phrases for each of these topics, and those were all consolidated and then sent over to the consultant for consideration into the OCP and the vision specifically. And from the feedback from both the public and council, they've come up with a multitude of statements that staff then went through and cut down, and we have the statements tonight. So if you can move forward. And these are the 6 themes here. So option 1 has more of a land use theme. There's some active merit in there as well. Option 2 is economic development theme. Option 3 actually has multiple themes. It captures a number of different areas. And then the short statements, the first one talks about a vibrant merit, second one talks about inclusivity, and the third one is about desirability here. So with that, let's jump right into the statements themselves. So this is the first one. Merit's land use is diverse, representing the breadth of activity which occurs within the city. Known as a fertile valley for art, music, and entertainment, Merit encourages this festival culture year-round by providing comfortable pedestrian areas, markets, and patios that are easily accessible on foot or by bike. Merit is known as a green gem, surrounded by beautiful parks and green spaces, and featuring well-maintained trails, sports fields, and public facilities. Business thrives in Merit, where proximity to surrounding communities supports a diverse economic base. Living in Merit is enjoyable due to a variety of housing options, including mixed-use, affordable, inclusive housing, a local commitment to community safety, and preservation of historic buildings which add character to the city. So as you can see, it's quite a long statement, but it does capture a lot of the topic areas that were discussed in engagement earlier in the process. There are, despite its length, there are several items that weren't really touched upon, including reconciliation. Climate change isn't really touched upon much in there either. So although it's captured a lot, it hasn't captured everything. So now let's look at the second option, which is a bit shorter, but very focused on the economy. Merit's thriving economy and potential for further development helps to attract and retain a range of business, from artisans and local providers to large-scale transportation and warehousing operations. As a hub for tourists in Nicola Valley, local commercial services boom and in turn create local jobs and investment. The diversity of business in Merit, ranging from those working from home to light industrial startups, supports a sustainable future for Merit in every sector. So as you can see, this is very economic development and tourism focused. It doesn't really speak to anything else. So next up, we have another statement that's quite long, but does capture a lot in it. Merit is the gem where the crossroads meet in the Nicola Valley. Long-term planning and responsible asset management support high service levels and regular maintenance and replacement of local infrastructure, ensuring that the city is an attractive and thriving community for all. The community's respect for the natural environment and diverse land use represents the breadth of activity which occurs within the city. Known as a fertile valley for art, music, and entertainment, Merit encourages this festival culture year-round by providing comfortable pedestrian areas, markets, and patios that are easily accessible on foot or by bike. Merit continues to be a vibrant, safe, and growing community surrounded by beautiful parks, green spaces, and features well-maintained trails, sports fields, and public facilities. So as you can see, this third option captures more of the themes. Out of all of the options, it probably comes closest to capturing or reflecting all of the feedback from council and the community. However, it's quite wordy as a result of that. So we have several late additions to consider, which are all much shorter statements. So the first here is Merit is a well-planned community that is vibrant, environmentally sustainable, and provides opportunity for all. This option is much more general in its language, but does include social, environmental, and economic aspects with the terms vibrant, environmentally sustainable, and opportunity. Next, we have Merit is a desirable and inclusive community that values people, nature, and opportunity. So again, this one also speaks to social, environmental, and economic topics in a general way, but also adds in inclusivity. And finally, we have the shortest statement for you tonight, but yet perhaps the most ambitious, and that is, Merit is BC's most desirable community. So short, but ambitious. So out of those, is there any that speak to you that you think we should pursue further? Is there any that should be cut from the list? So looking for general feedback and comments to begin the conversation here.
Councillor Andrew? Councillor Christopherson?
Yeah, just want to clarify something in my mind with the vision statement. It's not so much where we are, but where we want to be.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Thank you.
Basically what a vision statement is.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Christopherson, through your worship. Absolutely. So this is where we want to be in 20 years.
So when I went through all of these, something that kept striking me is that you were saying where we are. And I don't think necessarily this is where we are yet, but it's where we, everything in here is saying where we want to be. And so somehow I think our vision statement has to capture that this is an intent, not a fait accompli. Does that make sense?
So there's a couple ways of doing that. One is to use statements like will be rather than is. The downside of that is that this is what we want to be. So if we say it will be, then we're always chasing that, right? If we use that language. The other is to use action verbs. So a couple of examples could be creating BC's most desirable community, or making Merit BC's most desirable community, right? So using action verbs in that way. So that would be another way to get there. So rather than saying is, if you think that that's too bold at this moment to say is, right? It's because it doesn't reflect our current state.
Yeah, I just don't want to leave this open to people saying, oh, we're not really business oriented just yet, you know, how can we brag about it? Whereas I think if you say that this is our intention, somehow using the phrases that you mentioned,
right.
It's more like a goal that we're seeking, and maybe halfway there.
Okay.
Mr. Smith?
I just wanted to add that it is fairly common for vision statements to use is type language. Again, I think that it's the idea of you become what you say you are. And so when you say, you know, Merit is whatever it is that we're aspiring to, that tends to be a very common approach, and not just for cities, but for personal goals and development as well. I am a good father, even if I'm only aspiring to be a good father right now. And I think that that's something that is fairly common with vision statements. That being said, this is 100% your statement, so if there's a direction that you would rather go that feel more comfortable with that language, it's completely your ballpark.
Councillor Richard?
Well, I think I like a lot of the options that are here. I think 3 is probably one that's probably the not enough info and probably the safest. And but I'm worried that if we put too much info, then there's one thing that you did miss, or something that we have overlooked, or because right now we're thinking about something, or we left something out of our group. That's what I worry about. Where number 6, that would be my first one to turf. But I like number 3 because it talks about environment and entertainment, music, art. But I just worry that if we have too much, too broad of something, well, then you forgot this person or this group or this, you know, how about natural or, I don't know. The
Somebody
beach
will
or-
come up with something.
Yeah, something, I don't know.
that we
You've
won't
missed
be able to
something
pick
and
up.
then, you know, you've excluded someone or there's something like that. Thanks.
Councillor Fair.
So I wanted to say that I think I would lean towards the side of retaining the present tense in the statement. I think it's, adding another goal to my life at this point is probably pointless because it's just going to be on a list of goals. Making it, so that it's kind of a fake it till you make it idea, but I think from the perspective of the way people accomplish things, I think it makes sense to keep it in the present tense. It's just an easier way of adopting it and becoming it. I did want to mention that, like Councillor Etcher, I like version 3, and but I did find it maybe a little lacking on some reconciliation language. It's top of mind for all of us, I think, these days, but I would like to see something in there that more directly addresses it.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councillor Ashard, and I also agree with Councillor Fur. And I do like option 3. I find merit to be option 3 as is, and I think what we're attempting to do is enhance what already is to become the greatest city in British Columbia. But I 100% agree with Councillor Ashard. Where do we draw the line? And there will be one or two that will suggest we missed something, and that isn't our intent. Thank you.
Councillor White.
I agree with the previous comments as well, and I also agree with option 3, but wonder if it could be reduced a little bit, saying all those things.
Ms. Pierce. Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just one more very general comment about vision statements that I think we probably should have mentioned. There's two kind of broad approaches to vision statements. There's the either the capture everything approach, which actually historically has been a more common way of doing it for cities. It's a bit more old-fashioned and traditional to say everything under the sun and make sure you don't leave anything out. Because as Councillor Etchard said, if you do leave anything that's critical out, that's when you get hit. The alternative is to move towards a much more succinct that very clearly leaves out all kinds of important information, but it's addressed later in the document. One example that we actually talked about earlier today is the city of Richmond. And to give you an idea of what some other communities are starting to move towards. And they had said, our vision is for the city of Richmond to be the most appealing, livable, and well-managed community in Canada. That's theirs. And the idea behind it, and kind of the social science behind it, is that a short statement often becomes more used by the community. It can more easily fall into what the kind of practices and ethos of the community is. Whereas if you have a longer vision statement, you may capture everything, but it may be a little bit more cumbersome to actually utilize in the community. And so before going too far down, I did want to just highlight that whether council wants to do it or not, completely up to you. There is something of a trend to moving towards shorter, more succinct vision statements. But I will, with that, I'll let out.
Councillor Luck.
I totally agree. I think this is nice, but it'll be dropped. I don't think anybody would focus on it. It's too much. It's overwhelming for the community. I think and overwhelming for us to, yeah, we're the merit is the channel, we're the crossroads meeting, on and on and on and on. Whereas something like Richmond would be very short and succinct, and then we can explore that deeper into the document. That would be where my role would be, to have something else, and then we can, take it, drop of a hat and say, what is merit? Well, merit is, this is our vision for merit, right? 2 sentences, 3 sentences. And we can articulate that on a continued basis, I think, anyway. Absolutely. I just found this overwhelming. Good, but overwhelming. Thank you.
Councillor Bainville.
Thank you, Mayor. I got a slogan here. Merit, striving for greatness. That would be one of my suggestions. Thank you.
I know I agree with Councillor Luck. I think the shorter, the better. And I've worked with visions for healthcare where they became 3 pages long. And nobody knew what the vision of the organization was because they were just absolutely everything. And I think that's what we've got in this option 3 is trying to get absolutely everything. And not one of us are going to be able to memorize this. Or when somebody says, what's your vision for merit? Well, merit is the gem was crossroads.
Adam's challenging you on that.
It's just not gonna work, so, there isn't any one, a specific one out of the 4, 5, or 6 that I really like, but I would tend to do 5 with adding in environmental, sustainability in there somehow, just, and to me, that says it all. It says that we value people, nature. I guess that nature is environment. So maybe we don't need environmentally sustainable, but that means I'm looking at number 5 pretty closely here.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I was going to say if everyone was leaning towards the third statement as capturing what the essence of merit is, if we're going to shorten it, this is probably the one. It's the most equivalent in a shorter form, in a more succinct form.
Councillor White.
Also, the vision statement's always a part of the marketing of the community as well, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah, so to me, to try and fit all that number 3 into a marketing thing, it would be really difficult.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, I don't think you'd get your bang for your words out of it or something.
It would be a long elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah, Mr. Smith?
I think that Councillor White raises a really good point, but that's actually also a new development, that cities are actually using vision statements as part of their marketing, as part of their opportunity to attract people and businesses so that folks can have an idea as to what you can expect or what that community is collectively aspiring to. And so the reason you tended to see the longer, more onerous statements is because they did tend to be buried in policy documents and were not always front and center as part of kind of the city's outreach and public-facing program. And so I think that what you would find is if council chooses to go more of a shorter statement approach, that it would much more easily lend itself to exactly what you were talking about there. And that was part of what we wanted to talk about today, is kind of which broad approach, is it the long form or the short form? And if it is the short form, this doesn't have to be, the final version, but can we take a base, what do you like, what do you not like, and refine it to there? We've already heard one customer propose some ideas and how we can implement other things that are really important to you or are not represented well. So feel free to take it, have at it, chop it up. Don't all feel bound to what you see on the screen.
Yeah, and a good example of that is this says merit is a desirable and inclusive community. Should it say merit is BC's most desirable and inclusive community, da da da. You know what I mean? So feel free, if this is the one that you want to start with, it's just the starting point, and then feel free to alter it and change it how you will.
Councillor White.
Number 4 is also a good one. If number 4 and number 5 could be combined somehow.
Okay, can you pull forward?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that.
Okay, let's Can we, let's copy this one and 5 and put them on the next
Add the
slide.
word vibrant and maybe you've got,
That's what we start.
Well, and I think well
Because we have a
planned
slide, couple,
is,
couple down.
Yes.
There. Let's put them in, oh, oops. Yeah, let's put them in here.
This was.
You have to exit out of things. There you go.
Yeah, well, I think this is where we're at. We're trying to be sensible.
Is it not pasting?
Councillor Bailey?
Thank you, Mayor. If I may ask, who typically reads the OCP statement? Because Councillor White brought up a very good point, which is this thing is becoming a marketing tool or statement, and thus we should incorporate how it works. Can relate to the one that will most likely read. Thank you.
That should be our goal, is that people on the outside go to this vision statement and know exactly who we are and what we're about by a very short, succinct vision statement. Everyone should read it. Mr. What's your name down there, Smith? So,
It's been a rough day. The most common spot where this will be used, of course, other than the OCP, which I'm not saying the OCP isn't going to be heavily trafficked, but let's be realistic, it's not going to be heavily trafficked. Then one step down from that, it will have a feature, it'll feature prominently in Council's strategic plan document. The visioning there ends up flowing through to a lot of the other components of the strategic plan, which again is going to be, there was a draft that came forward months ago, and we'll be refining that with final projects here in the very near future. And then after that, I think that I would very much encourage council to think about how we can adopt this and make it more than just lip service. How can you build this into regular communications, promotional and marketing materials, even the work that we do with other community organizations? How do we use it to evaluate ourselves? Are we doing things, is my conduct towards another person, showing that I value people or that I value nature? There are opportunities to, I think, organically assess and implement this vision, so long as it genuinely reflects the vision of this group and, in your opinion, as representatives of the entire community, what the community believes that merit needs to become. And so I think that council really does become the primary kind of, you're the main people that are going to drive this vision, that are going to share this vision, that are going to try and seek ideas and thoughts and feedback from others that are going to help us advance towards this vision. So I think that it's really a fairly blank canvas as to how it's used outside of the OCP and your strategic planning documents.
now, can I ask the councillors who said they liked the longer version, can I have you let us know after all of this other stuff, Councillor Bear?
Yeah, so, what everyone said about having a sort of succinct statement did resonate very well with me, and I agree with that. I also like some of the aspects of option 4 and 5. I'm still a little hung up on reconciliation and caring about people kind of covers that in a generic way, but it's indirect. So I would still like to see something with that, with those words, with reconciliation, or that sentiment somehow included.
Councillor Bailey?
Thank you, Mayor. I wonder, Councillor Kerr, if we can satisfy that desire by incorporating language from the First Nations people. Maybe a part of our statement can be written in a First Nations language.
Anyone else? Councillor Church.
Well, of all the statements, the first three that we had before yesterday, I like to read the best because it has the detail that I like the most. But then when we got the email today, I do like 4 and 5. I do not like number 6. And you know, but if we had something a little bit shorter, just because, like you say, or like it's been discussed, people like to use these in marketing pieces, and people can remember the statement as a couple sentences. I think it's an idea about reconciliation and having comments that way, but I think also having the 2 sentences about caring about people, because I think reconciliation includes caring for people, but maybe it's not spelled out specifically, but it kind of comes under that, but maybe we need to spell it out during these times now.
And I'm throwing this out just for discussion. So what if we don't use the word reconciliation, but we have some kind of goals that come out of this vision statement that talk about reconciliation? That's one way to incorporate it, because inclusivity, in my mind, incorporates that to a degree. We don't have to have all the words we want in the vision, but we can put our goals into some of these words and bring them out to the public that way. What do you feel about that? Councillor Christopherson.
Along that line, I think perhaps values all people, and why I say that is that my group for the downtown revitalization is downtown today. We toured Spirit Square, and while we were there, there was a native lady that was struggling, homeless, and before anybody really drew attention to it, I noticed that a group in town, I'm not sure what the name of the group is, anyways, they travel through the area looking for people that are having difficulties and so on, and they stopped and they observed this lady for a while and made contact with her and found out some of her difficulties. Went and got some food for her and so on. And then they noticed that we were there and made contact with us as well, saying that Mayor is really struggling to get and starting to cope with the homeless population and valuing them as real people. Even though their circumstances are not very good, they're still people that need help and attention. And I thought what they were doing and how they phrased it was really important for us to realize that everyone needs to feel valued. And I agree with Councillor Fair that somehow we need to incorporate that into our vision statement, that everyone is valued.
Councillor Fair.
I really like the idea that Councillor Van Vue proposed to include some First Nations language in this. I think that would make a very clear statement to the bands that surround us, that are in our community, that we mean what we say and we're willing to put some substance behind it. I think that is so important in everything we do right now. I don't feel that diluting or making it generic as to all people or we care for everyone is appropriate right now. This is a little bit like the Black Lives Matter scenario. These are the cultures that are hurting the most and need all of us the most. And I really deeply believe that that needs to be recognized here.
And Councillor White.
I agree with having something in there, with the First Nations language. And I mean, if this is this is a vision statement for, future and down the road, I think we need to care about everybody, and yes, there's some right now that are the focus is on more than others, but I do think if we can say something in their language, in the First Nations language, I think that would be a good thing.
Mr. Smith?
I do wonder, because of course none of us here are linguists in any respect, but certainly First Nations languages in particular, but if there is a term that kind of roughly encapsulates this care for people and for nature, and if there was something to the effect that, merit is seeking to achieve whatever that word is, and then we describe what that is, care for people, nature and the world around us, or something like that. If there's kind of a word that encapsulates this principle, and then we can say that that's what we're trying to achieve, that might be one mechanism to get there. If that's what council is envisioning, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, but we may be able to work to see if there is, particular language, because my worry is that, as has been said here, that we don't want to have probably whole sentences or large amounts, but if there is a simple word or concept that can really capture this, I think that might be a way to go about it.
I also worry about the vision statement being our vision, 50 to 100 years out. That's our vision. It's going to last. If we look at doing something, that's a goal. So just keep that in mind.
And I would like to just piggyback on what Sean said there as well. So when we first started our engagement process with local First Nations, we were working on translation of the Flourish Together statement for the OCP, and we had numerous conversations that were quite interesting and fruitful over several months, but it's very difficult. It was very difficult for the Indigenous persons that were working with us to translate just the word flourish and together, because words don't easily translate from one language to another a lot of the time, and so there was a lot of debate around which word would be the appropriate word. And I should also mention that there are two local languages, right? So it's not translating once. So we would need to find words in two different languages, and so it's something that I think we should probably try to do. I think that's a great suggestion, but just being mindful, as Mr. Smith mentioned, that to translate an entire sentence or statement could be very difficult,
Can I
just
also
logistically.
ask you to explain our logo that we have on our OCP is also based on this inclusive kind of concept?
That's correct. So we worked with local First Nations to develop the logo. It brought in different elements, the water from the rivers, of course the Inclacapnic or Shwakam people are, of course, the people of the river, and so we brought that in, and there's the Saskatoon bushes is the branches that are around, and of course they wrap around being sort of like inclusive or together, right, bringing people together. So there was a lot of work that went into the symbology of that logo as well. So that's a great point, to your worship. So yeah, staff can certainly reach out to that group as well on this and see what we can potentially come up with.
I think Councillor White.
Oh, I was just going to ask the same question as how many, is there just one language with all of our bands? So, yeah.
Yeah, there's Inglekavik and Silks, so two language, the Nicola and the Okanagan languages. So
Councillor Bear, anything?
Yeah, just wanted to comment on the idea of symbols. I think that definitely has, oh, I'm not seeing that there now. It looks good. I was gonna suggest before you start talking about that, a medicine wheel, because I believe that's something that sort of transposes different bands and First Nations cultures. And along with that, perhaps we could include a short statement recognizing that the reason we have these symbols, because it might not be readily apparent to everyone that the rivers and the Saskatoon River, mean something towards reconciliation and towards the relationship we have with our First Nations neighbors. So maybe a short statement just pointing that out into that direction.
I'll let them do. Councillor Van
Thank you, Mayor. To modify the example that I previously gave, merit, we strive for greatness, written in English, and then the word welcome, written in the two different languages, the two different First Nation languages. Thank you. And that's an example, to fit as you will.
Anybody else have thoughts? Councillor Luck, I haven't heard from you much lately. Which is
Just listen.
rather unusual.
It's unusual. No, I'm good here. I'm just listening and learning.
Mr. Smith?
So, Your Worship, would the intent be to take some of these ideas and have us bring back, now that we've kind of refined it, I think, to a shorter, simpler message, again, we'll bring back perhaps 3 or 4 more tightly crafted, finely tuned words with the vision statements, with the idea that council will select one of the options that's ultimately proposed.
Anybody have an issue with that?
I like it.
We do want to make sure that what's on here, these are kind of the core principles that you're wanting to draw on, that's correct? Okay. I think we can make that happen contingent on hopefully some of the translation process is not being too complicated. That's something we can bring back in.
yeah, and Councillor Bangu also used the word strive or striving, so we might be able to bring that word in there as well. Okay.
Strive or even creating at one point.
Yeah, let's do a slash. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And the word all peoples.
Values all people.
Seeing as how you've got your fingers going.
I do like, and honestly, I know that this seems like a simple exercise, but we are really grateful for it because you get a little bit jaded when you read 200 different municipal vision statements. They all bleed together, so I actually like that there is something unique that is trying to be, that it's sort of peeking its head through, and hopefully that can come out with this, that Merit is trying to do something a little bit different. That yes, we like every other community is trying to have beautiful green space and economic opportunity and all of these fantastic things, and then provide that at great value. But there is something special happening here in Merit, and I think that if that is evident through a short potent vision statement, it can really go a long ways. And this has been something that, I mean, we as a staff team have talked about for a while, that if we can have a vision statement that resonates with people, that it can be used for a lot more good than what our historical, well, I'll say it's a mission statement, but even that was a vision statement. So, than any of these previous attempts have ever been.
And having said that, we also need to appeal to the entire population. And there's going to be a bell curve of opinions out there. Some are gonna hate this, some are gonna love it, and most of them aren't really gonna care. But there will be those ones that do not like it. Councilor White.
In the First Nations language, could it be like, because it's a vision statement, together we can, in the two different languages? Something like that.
Yeah, and that word together, I mean, because we have flourish together as our statement, maybe that's the word, together.
It could be, striving for togetherness, and the togetherness is in some, is translated. I know you guys, this is going to sound very silly, but when you guys started down this path, I immediately thought of, I think it's a Norwegian term, huga, something like that, that in the winter time, it's all about huga. I'm really botching this, I think, but it's this feeling of coziness and warmth that is what, like, happiness levels in Scandinavia are ridiculously high, despite the fact that there is, it's cold for a lot of the year, and a lot of the studies that have ended up coming through have brought it down to this big concept that has been reduced to a single word. And so I just think that it's a really powerful thing when you can take a big concept and bring that down to a word and, say that we are striving for that thing. I think it could be a very powerful approach, and I like the suggestion that council has brought forward. Not that that's what we would strive for, but just that kind of big concept being reduced.
Councilor Locke.
Yeah, the other, when we talk about people, and should we include that values citizens and people? Is that or substitute people for citizen, vice versa? Is that something in there? Is this is
Citizens, community,
community
taxpayers,
citizens? No, taxpayers.
residents.
I think the only reservation that we would have about citizens is it has a very particular legal meaning. If you are not a resident of Merritt, you aren't a citizen of Merritt. That means you are excluding, if you're a Lower Nicola resident, you're out. If you're in any one of our neighboring First Nations communities, you're out. And so I think that it's the hard part when you try to add any specificity. You often end up leading to a path of either exclusion or inclusion. Yeah. So, but we can keep that in mind.
No, good. No, this is one of those working through there. Okay.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. I like the direction staff is going with this, with a short statement. The traditional type of statements, I think, have been around long enough that I'm personally desensitized to them. I've read so many that it's a blah feeling that you kind of get, you walk away from it. Okay? So this idea of a short statement works, and perhaps other cities will also take this new direction. Thank you.
Anyone else? Have we given you enough to work through as staff?
I think so, Your Worship. This makes it very clear the direction that you want to go, and so staff will see what we can do about putting some statements together, and as well working with local Indigenous persons to help us get there with this. So, thank you for your input.
Do we have next steps?
can bring up the,
Got a bit more.
yeah, just one slide. So what we'll do then is work to develop a couple of statements that council can select from. And I'm not sure if we want to have Mr. Smith, another committee of the whole to do that, or if we would bring it to a council meeting, or how would we, what you would like to do.
I think if council would be okay with it, I think bringing this forward at a council meeting for kind of debate, and that way you guys are able to make a decision right at the meeting, as opposed to just having a general conversation about it. That would be my recommendation, but if council wants to have a committee of the whole, we can certainly make that happen.
I think this is where we have talked generally about what we want to see. So you've heard us, you've heard each one of us, so you have the bigger picture here about what we've been doing. So I would say what Mr. Smith has said, just bring it to us at a public meeting and let us debate that there.
Okay, perfect. So once we do that, then we'll incorporate the selected statement into the draft document. And then, of course, we have the next rounds of engagement. So once the draft document is ready, it'll be released for both public input and as well as council input in the document in general. And on that note, just as I had mentioned earlier, that the different topics that we covered at the Committee of the Whole in January, all of those topics will have their own section in the document, including reconciliation. So there will be a section in the document that speaks specifically to that topic. So, all right.
So we are all satisfied with our ongoing vision statement. Okay, that looks like we have, you've exhausted our opinions.